There is a thing called the doomsday clock, which on global terms tell you how close mankind is to destroying itself. And I believe the last time that this was published, we were 90 seconds away from midnight, midnight being oblivion. I guess in the world of cricket, there is a similar scenario brewing, whether you are aware of it or not. And English cricket has its own doomsday clock ticking away furiously, none more so than in the last few days when the ECB has unveiled and hastened its plans to sell off the 100 to franchises. And it doesn't look great. Now, Essex, at a very lively members' meeting last week, have pushed back against this and with some admiration, but there is a feeling that they are peeing in the wind, to use a phrase. Now, with me is Richard Clarke, who alongside me was at that meeting and has written a very good county cricket newsletter. If you don't subscribe, I suggest you strongly do, because it now more than ever it's important to engage and push back collectively about what's going on. So, Richard, we'll just start off with what the ECB are trying to do, and is it going to be whether we like it or not?
Hi, Darren. First question: did you get out of the wrong side of the bed this morning with the doomsday clock 5 minutes to midnight? Because I can't bear think. I was in a bad mood, but anyway, no, but going back to what you said, yeah, the Essex webinar was very interesting. You've got two phases of this. Obviously, the sales of the tournament that shall not be named. Currently, it is the 51%. Sorry, the 49% rather. There's 49% and there's 51%. The 49% out there is what is up for sale as it stands at the moment, and the interesting side of that is the spread of that revenue will be relatively even. Actually, if you look at certain scenarios, it's skewed a little bit more to the non-hosts rather than the hosts. Obviously, the hosts I'm defining here as the 8 venues for the tournament that shall not be named, right? So and that's okay. That process is just open. That sales process has just opened, and aside, above and beyond that, there is the sale of the 51%, which is owned by the host, which they can keep or they can sell a portion of or the whole of. And what was interesting is in the Essex webinar, the sale of that part was very, very much skewed towards the host. 80% of the revenue goes towards the host, 10% goes to the recreational game, and 10% is divided between the 19 other bodies. Okay, the 18 counties and the MCC, which leaves in a scenario that was outlined, and this is about the 51% that the counties, the hosts own. You might be a scenario where if a team was sold for 50 million, the host would get 40 million of that. The recreational game would get 5 million of that, and the other 5 million, the other 10%, would be split 19 ways. So if that is, for example, the Spirit franchise at Lords, then the MCC get 40 million and the likes of Essex get about 230,000. And of course, there's a load of things going on there. I don't think the MCC needs the money. I'll be honest. What they're going to do with it anyway is the other thing. Yes, they do some good work in and around growing cricket, but what do they need the money for? To a lesser extent, what does Surrey need the money for? Only, obviously, they're a going concern. They want to get bigger and bigger, but in the commonwealth of first class counties, they are the richer ones, the richest one, and we should add they've got to being one of the richer ones by being a very good business in comparison to other counties of a similar potential. Other things going on is the sale of the 49%, the initial sale that's going on now. Okay, that's fine. But anyone coming in and buying a sporting body, especially if you're an IPL franchise or you're a private equity group or whoever it may be, they're not going to want 49%. They're going to want control. And, I've been in negotiations around this stuff over the last couple of years, only to a minor level, but normally they want 80 to 100% because they want to enact their vision. They want to have the control to do what they want. So while certain of the hosts won't need to sell a portion of that 51%, okay, I think a lot of them will. And so you'll have a scenario where the revenue raising part of English cricket, of domestic English cricket, will be the tournament that shall not be named. It will be run for a month, and it will be controlled by ownership groups who quite understandably aren't going to bat for English cricket. You shouldn't expect them to.
Why
You
would
shouldn't
you?
expect.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's not what they're about. That's not why they've come in, and they shouldn't be criticised for that. So, what we end up with, though, is control control of this very important tournament to outside bodies. The only significant control that the hosts retain is that of the stadium, and bear in mind the hosts will also get money for running the stadium, running the tournament too, which is significant. And you get an increasing inequality between the hosts and the non-hosts, and increasingly that division is based upon, yes, ongoing revenue, yes, sales revenue, but also the facilities in the stadium that they have. I mean, we're big fans of Essex. Essex's stadium has been left for far too long. So you look at a scenario where a club like Essex, we're far behind in terms of the stadium. I'm jealous of, I went to Northampton earlier this year, last year, and I would argue they're a smaller county than Essex, okay? But it's a perfectly neat little stadium. It's better than Essex's stadium. Okay? And bear in mind that over the last decade, Essex have been arguably, Essex and Somerset are the two challengers to Surrey for like supremacy, I would think, certainly within the Championship. And yet Essex certainly in this scenario would be a second division county, and Somerset would be struggling to be a first tier county. And so it's a complicated story. It's locking in inequality, and it is throwing up questions about the ECB's vision for the game. Where do we want to be? What do we want to do? Do we make money to grow cricket, or do we go grow cricket to make money? Most of the county cricket fans would say the former. The way the ECB are acting here, I'm looking at the latter. We know we need money. We don't want to sit in the past. But at the same time, why does sport exist?
I worry about how the ECB are handling this, particularly in the change of direction from Richard Gould, or the two Richards, that, when they arrived at the top table, we were all full of hope after what they'd done at Surrey, and we thought at last we're going to have people that are going to represent the cricketing world, the game of cricket as a sport. But they seem to have turned around, and there was that astonishing admission on that Sky interview with Michael Atherton where Richard Gould said as much as that we were all being misled about the 100 under the previous regime. I'm sort of very much reminded of 2008 and Alan Stanford, when Giles Clarke was in charge, and there was that ridiculous scenario at Lords where Alan Stanford arrived in a helicopter, and there was Botham and Richards stood there with a pile of £1 million cash, and that was seen as being a saviour to the sport of cricket, and we all know how badly that ended. I'm just worried now that the ECB again are being caught a little bit with their pants down, because they are up against proper, and they're almost asking for trouble to be dancing with very seasoned and skillful business operators in the form of IPL franchises, and I think even worse still with American franchises that probably don't have any particular emotional link for the sport. but we'll be looking at the money point of view. And I'm just wondering whether counties have been led down a path, to, go along with the idea of the 100. And a lot of the cash-strapped counties just went, yes, please, we'll have that, because they had no choice. And there is a little bit of accept this, or you go out of business, and a little bit of like what we've seen at Yorkshire. And the noises that are coming from the ECB at the moment, despite counties like Essex pushing back, are, well, say what, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Tell me if I am. You can say what you want, but we're pressing on regardless. Is that what's going to happen?
Well, what Essex did in that webinar was say we are getting off the bus, as it were. That there has been a direction of travel agreed between the counties, which was to move towards these sales. That's absolutely correct. What concerns me is that direction of travel has been agreed by all the counties to move towards sales. Yes, okay, fine. But at some point, that broad direction of travel has to change into a detailed plan involving significant money into the game, but most importantly, a conversation about the distribution of that money, where it goes and how it is used. And my sense, and what we were told last week, is there has been very little detail over that. And when Essex got off the bus and said we are rejecting this process, Richard Gould spoke afterwards and described Essex as an outlier. So right. Essex are on their own. Despite the fact that in the meeting it was suggested that 5 or 6 other counties were of a similar view. Let's see what happens, okay? But the devil is always in the detail here, and what we have is an extreme power differential, where a lot of counties, in my opinion, know that this is long-term pain, but they need the short-term gain because they need the lights kept on. And that was also the situation over the 1.3 million payment for accepting the tournament that shall not be named. And yet again, it was a situation where the counties went into a room. Supposedly, this has been written up in that same piece by George DeBell, where he spoke to Richard Gould. At the time, the counties went into a room to supposedly discuss this new event and were told it was happening. It was sack me or back me from the chair. That was written in the piece, and the press release was written, and it was out pretty much before they left the room. Now that's not, in my opinion, the right way to run a sport. That is not cohesive, and it's interesting because what we're doing here, and what we've done throughout this process, is we are locking in resentment. Now, I read a piece recently just about MK Dons. We know what happened with Wimbledon, blah, blah, blah. They moved from South London. And that's the resentment over MK Dons and the first quote unquote franchise of football has never gone away. This piece was saying, quite understandably, whether it's right or wrong, I'm not sure, but they're unloved. That resentment over that has never gone away. What we're doing through this process, what the ECB are doing, are locking in resentment. Because I was at the county ground to see Essex on the Monday of the Worcester game and chatted to a lot of fans. And I've had a lot of fans contact me via the newsletter. And they're all of the same view, albeit they don't necessarily know how to change it. And they don't always know what's going on, right? Because the clarification, there hasn't been a lot of clear communication. But one thing they're sure of is they don't like this. And the ECB have never taken fans' views on over this throughout the process. Never have done. And things like the Strauss report excluding the tournament that shall not be named over decisions over the future of English cricket. All that is acting not paternalistically, but dictatorially. And it's locking in resentment. And I think that is locking in problems going forward. And they'll say, but we need the money. And I get that. We do need the money. But you are in a situation here where, you know, it's like when a union boss talks to an employer. They have to be very sure that in order to get a wage increase, they don't lock themselves into the, I don't know, the inability to strike going forward, you know, or certain provisos that make them powerless going forward. What I fear is we're locking in inequality. Okay, we're going to make 8 super counties, and we are going to, and there also are going to be broken promises going down the line. For example, the story that came out this week is the 2 London franchises may constitute 60% of the total revenue. Okay, great. So, okay, fine, that's understandable. Really lovely stadiums. And the interesting thing is, I've seen Essex play Blast games in both of those stadiums, and they've been packed out. And I've had people this week look at the Blast quarterfinals and say, weren't they great? Weren't they packed? Sold loads of tickets, record ticket sales. Why are we not just back in that? We'll go figure. There's something else at play here. But anyway, let's go back to the London franchises. If they're 60% of the sales, and that's what brings in the money from outside, when and if it's expanded to 10 franchises, you know that one of those is going to be in London. It doesn't make any it doesn't make any sense for it not to be. So Durham and Somerset have supposedly been in the frame for, so we read, for those extra franchises. Gloucester's been talked about as well, with Gloucestershire, I should say, with their if they move to a new stadium. Well, if they're being brought on board by that carrot, I think one of those is going to be very unhappy and lock in resentment. We're locking in resentment. And I think English fans are so passionate, English sports fans are so passionate, that won't go away. You look at MK Dons, the same things happen. So this has been poorly managed. You know, what Richard Gould said on that interview last week, if that was football, the way that would be back page news, that basically it's an admittance that the
Super League,
that the governing body lied about their true intentions to the counties to get this over the line. That's implicit within what was said. How's that acceptable?
Yeah. What about the outliers? And let's assume that Essex are not alone, and there's possibly 4 or 5 others. What is the risk for them in this whole process?
That it falls apart and they don't get any money, and one of them goes under. That's kind of it. I mean, bear in mind that you've got the ECB as part of this. Sky's broadcast deal is hugely important, and Sky have been a big backer of this tournament. So the ECB need to be very aware of that. And it's, you know, it's certain people will say it's Sky's money that has kept counties going. That may or may not be true, but certainly you need to manage all your stakeholders here. My concern is that throughout the process, the ECB have listened to consultants and listened to broadcasters over those people who actually love the game. And it's not about change for me anyway. I don't want to go back to, I want to make change in English cricket. You know, I've always said, if we were to ever scrap this tournament, I don't think it'll ever happen. There's too many execs whose career is based on this, and there'd be too much egg on their face to accept it. But if we ever were to scrap this tournament, that's when we have to get going, because we have to build something better. That would be the great opportunity now. But as I say, there's too much money and too much ego involved for that to happen. And, you know, I fear for where we are now, because this grand plan, you know, when people talk about disruption in sports business, they talk about disruption. And it's fine being disruptive if you're an individual business, but when you're being disruptive as a governing body, you're upsetting. Disruption by definition is not change. It's pretty much is. It's often used as a modern term for change. But actually, when you're being properly disruptive, you are unsettling the foundations. And that's what they're doing here. They've been allowed to be disruptive, or they've been pushed to be disruptive. When as a governing body, I think you need to be more evolutionary, not revolutionary, and iterative, albeit in the past, the counties have blocked that, and we need to change that. And county members have blocked that as well.
It is all very depressing, and it's kind of like everyone's on board a runaway train. And in like those old Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner cartoons, we can see the end of the cliff is not far off, but the driver of the train is telling us everything's all right, don't panic.
Well, that's an interesting point you make, because everyone has been saying for ages, this tournament's going nowhere. This tournament's going nowhere. Like it's just has a protective bubble around it. No, the reason it's going nowhere is because senior people don't want it to go anywhere. That's why. Yeah. That's why. Sky don't want it to go anywhere because they've backed it. The senior people at the ECB who created it. I worked in sports organisations, and there's a lot of ego. There's a lot of ego. There's a lot of silos, and there's a lot of egos, and people want their ideas to work. And it will be extremely embarrassing if this were to ever fall apart, and to such an extent that I think you might have to. Like the TCCB used to exist, and the ECB came out of it, to be more modern. It might need a new governing body with a new head on its shoulders. That's actually what I want, to be honest, because I think that the resentment we're locking in will linger, and people, county cricket fans now see the ECB as many county cricket fans now see the ECB as the enemy of the game, and that's a really unhealthy position. I don't want that. I don't want that to be the position, but that's how many of them feel, and that may apply to governing bodies across sport, but it applies particularly to the ECB. I'm aware of other sports, and the ECB in particular are seen that way, and that's of course a caricature. There's many good things that the ECB have done. Even Tom Harrison, who I have absolutely zero time for, there were certain good things that he did. We must all not paint caricatures here. But in the minds of many county cricket fans, I would venture to say a good majority, they see the ECB as the enemy of traditional county cricket.
Yeah. Now, before I let you go, I want to just ask you as well about the news that broke last night. Sticking with Essex, they've been fined or docked 12 county championship points, but the illegal bat that Feroze Khushi used at the start of the season in the game against Notts. Just sort of run us through why this is taking so long and why it's unfair. The chairman, Annie Mahindra, has launched a passionate rebuttal of the decision. How do you see it?
Well, firstly, congratulations to you, my friend, because you got this right a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago, right? So if you're a journalist, you would be touting that from the hilltops, the fact that you nailed this, as said by Darren Mutu months ago. But anyway, yes. Well, yet again, this is 12 points. So my first question is, why is it not 10? Because that's what the Durham player got a couple of years ago, I believe, and it's the same offence. I would also say I believe 10 is too high. I believe 10 is too high, and should it be on the player, not the club? This is on the club. Now, the precedent was 10 points on the club. I accept that. I believe that is too high, and I believe that is wrong, and I did at the time with Durham, but I accept that's what's happened before. What's happened with regard to Khushi is, from what we read in the Times, that the gauges, it failed one gauge, it went through another gauge after the game when it was tested, and there were some of the ECB gauges that they were using, I think I'm right in saying, were of different sizes, albeit it eventually failed about a month later, a gauge that was properly calibrated, and so clearly it failed overall. However, why, if it's passing at the ground after the game, is that being passed on? Okay. Why are we, yes, it's failed on the pitch, it's passed off the pitch, but why is that not being accepted? But yet again, you look at this ECB process, and why the hell has this taken so long when it should be pretty open and shut? If it doesn't go through the gauge, it's 10 points, we're done. That's the precedent. Okay. And albeit I'm cheesed off with this, that I couldn't have argued with if it had been happened very quickly, straight away. And I don't see why it shouldn't. But they've made such a mountain out of this and left it so long. For example, if we'd have beaten Worcester last week, which we should have done, Essex should have beaten Worcester last week, this would have been a title chance killer.
Yeah.
As it is, it doesn't really matter in the long term. But it just seems an unnecessary palaver when this should be a pretty open and shut case. And bear in mind that the Essex chair has a big legal background. Even Keith and Fletcher has come out and called the ECB stupid over this. I think it was the ECB run the CDC. I think I'm right.
Yeah.
And Keith Fletcher doesn't normally get involved in stuff like that.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't.
So this needs to be looked at, because this disciplinary, and also the regulator agreed with Essex. Yeah. So they appealed. The regulator agreed with Essex, and it still went on, and they still took the bat for a month. The other thing is, from a legal perspective, these bats change sizes. They swell up, right? It's wood.
Well, I was going to say, that delay when they were having it, did they leave it in a damp shed at the bottom of the garden before they tested it again?
I don't know. I mean, the other thing, the Notts game, it was very wet. Now, a lot of these bats, I don't know about the modern bats particularly, but presumably they're encased in some sort of plastic type material.
Polyarmor or whatever it is, yeah.
Yeah, polyarmor. But is it not possible for water to get in there and swell the bat? And so if it's coming out of the factory, and bear in mind, Gray Nichols have supported Essex, and Essex have supported Gray Nichols out of this, and bear in mind, it's their job. Is it possible for bats to swell in the wet a little bit?
It's millimeters we talk, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to this. I don't know the answer to this. I mean, yes, it was only millimeters over, and okay, but you've got to have a line somewhere. If we've broken the rules, we've broken the rules. But yet again, this has gone on for ages. It had the ability to affect Essex's what's the word I'm looking for? Not credibility, but the integrity of the competition of the county championship. It should not have taken this long, and it should not have gone through this process. And I think there's serious doubt over whether Essex could not have appealed successfully. And I would say at the heart of this is, should it be as high as 10 points, even 10 points, and should it be on the club, not the player? When I think I'm right in saying it's down to the player to make sure that their equipment is all of the right standard, etc., etc. So if it's down to the player in that sense, why is it not down to the player
for the punishment?
In terms of the punishment, why do you not say, right, why is it not, your bat's over, it hasn't gone through the gauge, it passes on the pitch, it fails on the pitch, it fails off the pitch, you're banned for 3 games, done. Why is it not that? Why is it not that?
And my problem with this is, why is it taking so long? If there was a problem at the time, it should have been dealt with at the time, and the punishment meted out at the time, not this long drawn out.
It just takes up energy, and it takes up integrity when we've got so many other things to deal with regard to particularly county cricket. This should be a slam dunk either way, and there should be regulations set up to deal with this effectively and quickly and clearly. We can argue over severity, we can argue about who should be punished, but it's just taken far too long. And yet again, it just whittles away at our belief in the way this sport is being run.
All very sobering stuff. Well, as always, I would recommend that you subscribe to Richard's excellent The Grumblers County Cricket newsletter, easily found by going onto Google and just Googling searching for county cricket, and it's the first thing that comes up. Subscribe to it. It's for free. And then while you're there, buy Richard a coffee. He needs his coffees.
You've never bought me a coffee. You always tell everyone else to buy me a coffee. You've never, ever bought me a coffee, Mutu.
I'll buy you a curry.
All right. Well, you'll buy me a curry just before that doomsday clock runs out.
All right, Richard. I will let you crack on. Always great to catch up. And yeah, I'll tell you what. Now I will have to go and buy you a coffee.
Gotcha.
You did. Richard Clarke, aka the Grumbler, always brilliant, and we'll speak soon.
Cheers, Darren.